How deep is hell? Well, for our Octonauts crew, it's actually 35,876 feet deep in the ocean. But why? Why is it that this children's TV show that on the surface is all fine is really an exploration of our planet's most horrifying abyss? Well, really, it's quite simple. The ocean is terrifying. A world more unexplored than space, with actual monsters straight from hell. And in this video, I shove my goblin mascot in the Octonaut submarine and see what really happens if they submerge the great depths of our ocean, what they see at each level, and how for sure they wouldn't survive. Let me explain. Let's start with something simple, the sunlight zone, a place our Octonauts will have no trouble with, being easily the safest place compared to our other horrors, filled with coral reefs, sea turtles, and I guess somewhat dangerous animals like sharks, or my favorite thing in the sea, the Man of War, which is a name that makes me think he's some Spartan warrior ready to throw hands at Captain Barnacles. But this place isn't boring, far from it. The sunlight zone is filled with interesting things. Going about 200 meters or 660 feet deep for us Americans, while me and you as Mobies and fat Canadian, this place is the powerhouse for oxygen itself. The misconception that floats around is that trees are the reason we have all our air, which is not true. Oxygen is produced by multiple things, and 50 to 80% of it is produced by the photosynthesis produced not by trees, but phytoplankton. Now this process can only happen at the sunlight level, as they need sunlight to photosynthesis. And after making their food, the oxygen comes out as a byproduct in the water and bubbles up to the air we breathe. Now, how exactly can Octonauts help these guys? What problems do they face that would need our crew to help? Well, not much directly, but they would direct our gang to some issues going on in the water itself. See, while this level looks like a paradise, sadly it's on the front lines of a lot of climate change. Corals are being bleached as the water they live in get warmer, turning entire reefs into dead ghost towns. All the while, the ocean itself is absorbing our carbon dioxide, making the water more acidic for the coral and shell-building animals. But why would it hurt the shell-building animals? Well, it degrades their shell itself, which isn't good for the animal as they rely on these shells to live and protect themselves. Now, why are the coral reefs themselves important? Well, think of it like the rainforest of the water, being home to a myriad of sea animals that are all vital to our planet. This includes phytoplankton, which produce, again, 50 to 80% of the stuff you breathe. But this is far less horrifying and more importantly dangerous compared to the next location our Octonauts are trying to visit, the Twilight Zone. Let me explain. Going a little deeper with our Octonauts, exactly 650 to 3,300 feet under the surface, the Twilight Zone, no, not that one, is a very weird place. This is the second layer of our ocean and sunlight literally doesn't reach here, but it is by far filled with life, being home to many of the most famous sea animals. This is confusing. How can things live somewhere where light cannot travel, where plants cannot live, especially at high pressure, being 21 to 101 times what you would experience up on land? Well, it's quite complicated, but also wonderful. See, with 95% of all fish mass by weight, the Twilight Zone has a lot of life, and every night, whether microscopic plankton to fish and squids, swim thousands of feet upwards to the sunlight zone in what would be the world's largest migration. They do this to feed and use the darkness from the nighttime to hide away from the predators. This is a crazy thing, simply put, and shows us the massive scale of the Twilight Zone's fish, which leads me to ask two things. How can anything survive here with the pressure without plans? And what exactly are the Octonauts gonna see? Well, when Captain Barnacles and Mobley adventure down the depths, they'll find the smallest and largest animals of our planet, like microscopic organisms to blue whales. A lot of them, due to the light, have developed organs that produce bioluminescence. And while you obviously know this is used to hunt other fish, when you see a big light in the dark, you go to it. It's a foolproof plan. But what else do they use it for? Well, the Atolla jellyfish, something the Octonauts have met, use it to call for help. Good thing the Octonauts are here. See, when they're attacked, they produce a spinning blue flash that actually alerts other large predators that, hey, look at the food that's attacking me. Come and eat it, and can safely escape while these two predators fight. This is a genius evolutionary trait, and really interesting because it shows bioluminescence is not just for hunting, it is the language of the ocean's depths, because when you don't have light, you'll find a way to get it and use it a lot more than we do because of how valuable it becomes. But I still have to ask, how do things survive down here? Not for food, that's pretty simple really. They eat each other or use marine snow, which is basically nutrients that rains down from the surface, which will come in later on why this place is important to us. No, I'm wondering about the pressure. Well, one big reason animals up here on Earth don't live in high pressure is the not so little air pockets inside us between our bones, organs, and lungs. All those things when in high pressure are going to collapse and well kill you, and Mobley. But unlike Mobley, fish under the sea deep in the depths don't have air cavities, mainly because their organs are gooey, jelly-like, and a lot of times fluids, so they don't really need them. And the deeper you get, usually beyond the twilight zone, you'll find deep sea fish and invertebrates without skeletons, or at least mineral ones. Instead, they have flexible jelly-like skeletons along with their blood, organs, and everything really inside them. And while all of this is very wonderful and kind of terrifying, I have to ask, why should you care? What is the importance of this place to us? Well, it regulates the climate in a very important way. It basically is a massive carbon sink. Animals that consume that carbon-rich marine snow I talked about that falls down to the massive sink carry all the carbon deep in the ocean. This means that carbon dioxide levels can stay low, and without it, it would be 50% higher. So yeah, this zone, its fish, and the water they live in is insanely important to you and the air you breathe. But what about below it? How far can we really go? Or more accurately, how far can the Octonauts go? Well, how about the Midnight Zone? Let me explain. So dark it could be fused with space, filled with creatures of horror, and freezing with pressure so deadly, this is the Midnight Zone. And as our Octonauts descend into it like time and time before, what do they see? Well, from the tripod fish to giant squids, to the literal goblin shark, which Mobley happens to like to an unnatural degree, someone please check on him, this place is brewing with unnatural looking life. This is all because this place is unnatural. Pressure is 400 times the surface waters and 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Scientists didn't even know things lived down here for a long time, but now we do, and well, if you watched Octonauts, you'd know that. The show is actually pretty accurate, at least on the marine side itself, like showing anglerfish as small little guys instead of huge demons like Finding Nemo does. No, instead the show makes them all cute and small, which is half accurate. Now another interesting thing with the organisms down here is, contrary to what you may think, they're not small, at least not all of them. No, this place actually leads to fish developing super largely, which scientists think is due to slow metabolism and the cold conditions. With all this, I have a question. How do things live down here? What are the main places animals are thriving? The coral reefs of the Midnight Zone. Well, I bring you two answers. Whale corpses and hyperthermal vents. See, there is something called a whale fall, and it's basically when a whale corpse falls down to the Midnight Zone, which while rare is a crazy event that creates entire ecosystems of just feeding on their rotting bodies. This lasts for a very long time, leaving food for years for scavengers and small organisms, and decades to a century for bacteria. But this isn't the main place life thrives down here. No, it's really hyperthermal vents. When traveling far deep in the Earth's Midnight Zone, you find magma. And while the heat from this hot earthy material affects the layers of our Earth above it, including water inside the Earth. Now, a hyperthermal vent happens when deep below the ocean, some of that warmed up water breaks through and shoots into the ocean like a geyser. This geyser is insanely important for life down here, and it comes down to our light problem. This is the Midnight Zone. See anything? Exactly, you can't. Because the Midnight Zone is far beneath where sunlight can travel, meaning life has a very difficult time down here. Anything that does photosynthesis is kind of screwed here, and they are very important to food chains for other organisms. So what do hyperthermal vents do to fix this? Well, that heated water is creating very rich chemicals that chemosynthetic organisms can use in the same way a plant uses sunlight. This is insane. It's something astrobiologists have used to theorize on the origins of life itself and how hydrothermal vents could be the first things that power life on Earth and the early deep oceans, and has led us to theorize on how life could survive without sunlight. This includes on other planets with deep water oceans under frozen ice. If those planets have hyperthermal vents, they could harbor millions of life forms, all because of hyperthermal vents, which the Octonauts visit time and time again, but never truly show how crazy they they are for our planet and the universe. But what about deeper than here? The other two levels are both horrifying and abyssal, or even hatal. Let me explain. Now, before we continue, I want to peel back the curtain for you, the audience. See, these videos are really just my excuse to talk about science on the internet. Using things we all grew up with is an easy way to get into it. Because whether it's if you can kill Inspector Gadget, or the weird power suits of Wildcrats, they all have underlining cool science to teach. So if you enjoy that, please subscribe and just finish the video. It helps out a lot. Either way, back to the horrors. Now, you may be a little confused. Why am I combining these two sections? Well, because they have to work hand in hand, since they are both thin in size and blend together on what's unique about them. But holy shit, are they unique. Located 13,000 to 36,000 feet deep to the bottom of the ocean, these two zones are deadly. Starting out with pressure, I've teased a bunch mentioning the craziness of each level, but this is where it kinda gets stupid. In the abyssal zone, you have 400 to 600 times the pressure of normal sea levels, and in the hatal, you got 1,100 times. Basically, at the bottom of the Marina Trench, every square inch is gonna experience roughly 8 tons of force. Now, we already know how these fish survive that. Their bodies are built to equal the pressure and don't compress, but they still have challenges in keeping proteins and cell membranes functioning how they need to. But going upwards to the abyssal zone, you'll find plains of endless deserts. See, when most people imagine an ocean floor, they think it's super bumpy and has canyons and mountains, and that's because they do exist, but for the most part, down here, it's the smoothest and flattest place on Earth. This can go on for thousands of miles with no variation in the elevation, making it flatter than deserts on land. But this is broken up every few thousand miles by mountains that, if compared to our tallest ones on land, could rival them, and volcanoes that help out those hyperthermal vents. This place is also technically the largest habitat on the planet because the abyssal zone covers 60% of our surface. Now, does that make it a good place to invest in real estate? Well, no, but far better than the hatal trenches, which are basically geological scars, because they're very much not normal layers, as the hatal zone only exists in deep ocean trenches that form when tectonic plates collided and one slid beneath another. This is something you probably know, but is very interesting and kind of scary. We have the famous Marina Trench, along with the Tonga, Japan, and a few other ones. If you add all these together, you get an area of around the size of Australia, yet it's still half the ocean's entire depth range. Now, during my research, I wanted to figure out how we knew all this, because it's not like we're taking frequent trips down here. It's actually incredibly difficult to take a submarine, or God forbid a human, to these depths, which is not great for the Octonauts or Mobley, but I digress. And well, I learned through all of this that sonar, which I knew was something they used in Waymos, and had obviously heard of it being used in ocean mapping, but not how crazy it is. See, scientists use sonar to map the sea floor, because obviously sunlight cannot reach the depths to give them light. So, sonar instead uses sound. Basically, ships that ride the ocean waves use it by sending sound waves downwards and measuring how long the echoes take to return. Essentially, they're making images based on the distance and time of sound traveling instead of light. But we still aren't that close to fully understanding the ocean, and have mapped the moon and Mars in far greater detail than something that in the end is only 7 miles deep. Yes, that is insane, but also a 8-minute drive. But we have developed things to go down there. Being deep sea submarines are just small little balls of metal that are surprisingly simple. See, a spear can distribute all the pressure evenly and doesn't have the weak corners, so as long as it's thick enough, it's gonna be able to survive. But even with that, we still barely know again or understand the hatal zone, and most of our knowledge is from the few expeditions in the 50s and stuff we're just learning now in the last decade. And that makes sense. It's a horrifying place with crazy pressure and animals and temperatures, and is incredibly large. And while the Octonauts can go there and anywhere really they want to save all the animals in their paths, we can't. But we're still moving at a great speed, making amazing technology and stepping closer to understanding a world that is more unexplored than space, harbors real aliens basically, and true horrors. If you liked this video, I'm sure you liked this one covering the horrors of using abilities of crazy cool animals without the defenses, or this playlist with all my wonderful science content. Either way, bye!